Just change this. Actually, before we start, I always feel it's nice to be able to bring something or offer something, give something back or something to you before I start. So I was up in Wales yesterday, and I've got a couple of gifts. Whoever would like them. Would anyone like a brace of pheasants? What do you mean, is it real? Do you want to feel it? Huh? Nobody? Huh? No. You want them, Adam? Okay, Adam. Right, okay. You've got to gut them, though. Right, and you've got to pluck them. And he sat back down again now, hasn't he? Right, okay. It's alright, I have lots of people that will take them. Nobody here will want these. Oh, alright, okay, we've got 2 and 4. Right, okay, that's fine. There you go. So, there you go. There you go. Okay. Okay, so. That woke you up, isn't it? Right, okay, so. Oh, they're dead. Right. I got it last time I looked. Right, okay, so. Right, end of my gifts. Right, okay, so. What can we learn from people that served during the war or grew up during the war? So, a couple of readings. First of all, as they naturally understand the public laws of the universe through their own experiences, people will undergo definite changes to their character and become true individuals. They will no longer be self-centered in relating to the greater wholes in the universal order of being. They will learn to be altruistic, living for the sake of others. So this actually comes from the world scriptures, and Father was actually talking actually about older people in general, and saying that as obviously through your kind of like life experiences, you change, right? We're not the same people we were when we were 7 years old, right? When we're like, children, the first thing that, if you're like Ben, he's just like me, right? And as you get older, you start to learn through your experiences about sharing. I give you this, you give me that. And there's the sharing. And then as the teenagers, you start to learn to do something, volunteerism. But as through your experiences, you change. So nobody here is the same as when they were 7 years old, right? And we learn to think about others more as we grow up in our lives. But also, Father was very interested in people that served after the war, or during the war. Because at that time, certain conditions had been met, right? And people were meant, at that point, the conditions had been met, ready to receive him. So, Father was interested in these people. Also, a couple of other quotes. Do good, lend, and expect nothing in return, and your reward will be great. Luke 6:35. And a great man is always willing to be little. So, at the beginning of the year, who can remember, I know it's going back to January, but who can remember the sermon I gave in January? Nigel's got his book there, right? You can flick through it. Or doesn't it go that far, Nigel?
July the 8th.
Oh, July the 8th, right, okay, yeah.
I'm going to take a guess and say something about setting goals.
Yeah, because that was in January, right? So it might have been about goals, right? Okay. Actually, it was more, talking about being reactive or proactive, right? And saying that, often we react to certain situations. If there's an event, come and help, yeah, I can do that. But actually being proactive is actually going out and making an event. Doing something yourself, or doing something different, or getting involved somewhere where you didn't get involved before. And I talked about this lady here. Anyone remember her? Right, okay, her name was Christina, right? And she wanted to buy an advent calendar that actually did some good, rather than just open the chocolate bars and eat the chocolate every day. So she tried to find a charity advent calendar, and she couldn't find one, so she was proactive and she made her own. And I think last year she got it into like John Lewis and other places, and Virgin came on board, and she chose 24 charities, and I think you paid £1, basically you paid about £25 for the calendar, and she got it donated by somebody who made it for her. And every day you opened a box, £1 went to that particular charity. And, she could have just sat on her laurels and thought, well, I've done that now. But actually, she's been more proactive this year. She made one for children. So this is the children's one this year. And she's also made calendars, so that you can buy for calendars. So for the first of the month, first day of the month, it's for 52 lives. And it says, today you have sent a big box full of kind messages to a child who has been bullied, making sure that they don't feel alone. So every day there's a different one, and it might be that you help feed somebody on Christmas lunch, or it might be for Animal Foundation or things like that. So she's been incredibly proactive during this year, and she hasn't sat back. So, as I gave that sermon at the beginning of the year about being proactive, who here has been more proactive this year? Few. Right, okay, that's good, right? So, okay, so that's, done extra or expanded into different places. Don't worry if you didn't put your hand up, because there's still time, right? Okay, we've still got 1 month left. As Anne Frank said, how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. So who here under 25 can tell me who Anne Frank was? Well, quite a few. Kai?
He was a Jew.
Yes?
In the World War.
Yes?
He was hiding in a secret island.
Yes, where? Do you know where? I've got some more pheasants if you want them for your answers, yeah. In where?
Was it like on Earth?
No, someone said it over there. Where was it? Holland, that's right. So she was born in Germany, but then she escaped to Holland and she had to hide but in a cupboard, like a secret cupboard. And basically she wrote this diary. And eventually her whole family was captured by the Germans. I think they were sent to Auschwitz. And basically only her father survived. And afterwards he went back to the house and then to the secret hiding place, and he found her diary, which he then published and is, So anyway, lots of people study her diary, and there are plays about it and things. It's a textbook in schools and things, but there's a lot that you can learn from that diary. But the point is, if you haven't been more proactive this year, right, you can start immediately after this service, right? You can start tomorrow, right? Don't delay, okay? There's still time. So, question for you. Anybody here, not really old enough, but anybody here served during the war? No, I didn't think so, okay? Anybody grow up during the war? Okay, so one person here, right, has grown up during the war. You can, I believe you can learn anything from anybody, right? I just chose these people and I'll tell you why I came to this service as we progress. But anyone that, you can learn something from the lowest person on the street. But certainly you can learn from people that grew up during the war or they served in the war. This is a picture of my great-grandfather there. And he served in the First World War and the Second World War, right? That is someone called General Haig. Anybody heard of General Haig? Right, he was in charge of the Western Front, basically, of the Allied armies. He was presenting him with a military cross for some act of bravery that he did in the First World War. In the Second World War, my grandfather died in the Second World War, but I never really got to know my grandparents, people directly, because one was killed in the war and then one got a disease in the war and then he died shortly after I was born, so I never really got to know them. But there's a lot that you can learn from those people, either the ones that served or the ones that grew up in the war. One of the things that you can learn is to be frugal, right? What does frugal mean? Anyone under 20? Right? They're looking at each other like, I've never heard that word, right? Nobody know what frugal is? Under 25? Yep.
It's like being thrifty, it's not using more than you need.
Yes, right, okay, so there's a difference between being cheap or stingy rather than being frugal. So, People who are frugal understand the value of money and make informed or thoughtful decisions. People who are cheap try to spend as little money as possible. So there's a difference, okay? So frugal is not being wasteful, right? And it's like, today we live in such a throwaway society, right? If something breaks, we throw it away, we buy another one, right? Or we upgrade, right? Anyone got the iPro 11? What's that? Right, okay, fine. Okay, press the new iPhone, right? Okay, so some people, they get the latest one, the latest one, the latest one, the latest one, and it's like, if it works, you know, don't use it, right, okay? Use it, right, okay? People that grew up in the war, they're not like that. They try and fix it, or they repair it, or they, you know, if it works, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Partly because they went through rations during the war, right? So they understand the value of things. So for those of you who didn't grow up during the war, these are what you got on a weekly basis. So you got 4 slices of bacon, that was basic, and basically 2 shillings of meat, which is the equivalent of 2 chops. So 2 tiny bits of meat in the middle of the 2 chops, right? And 4 slices of bacon. That would be your meat ration for the week. For some people, that's probably like for 1 meal, right, these days, right, for a lot of people. You had 1 egg, right, per week, per person, right? So people that grew up in the war, they understand the value of food or wastefulness. My dad, rations didn't actually finish at the end of the war. They went on for about 5 or 10 years afterwards. And my dad, you know, I talked to him occasionally. Actually, the last meal I had with him, we were sitting down for food, and everyone, there was about 6 of us around the table, and he grew up during the war, and at the end of the meal he said, I can see I'm the only war baby here. And he said, you see, everyone here has left something on their plate. You've left, I've left my parsnips, I'm not really keen on parsnips. And someone else had left some olives, and he said, in the war, you ate it because you didn't know when it was next coming. You ate what was given to you, and you were grateful for it. I know from when he grew up, he never had new clothes until he was about 16 or 17. All his clothes were fifth hand. So his brother got them first, they then went to his sister, they then went to another family, and her brother and her sister had them, and then they came back to him. So he had fifth hand clothes all the way up until he was about a teenager. Like I say, he's frugal. My dad has money, he's comfortable, but he's frugal. So he has this fridge that's 30 years old, if it's a day, right? And the seal goes on it, you know, so it doesn't shut anymore. So rather than, you know, and he tried to fix it, and the seal, and it didn't work, so he said, it's okay. And he called the local mechanic, come down, and I want bring your welding kit. So the guy comes down, he said, I want a latch, so that when you shut the door, you put the latch together so that the door won't open, and it's shut tight. And it used to drive me mad, because you go to the fridge and you're like, it's stuck. Oh no, the latch is there, you open it like that, you know. And then of course when you shut it, you have to put the latch on. And he was happy with this. And then the hinges rusted off. I mean, the actual whole door dropped off, right, on one side. But he still did not want to get rid of that fridge, right? So he got the welder back again, welded on the hinges to the door, right? He has a belling, right? Who knows what a belling is, right? He had got it on his wedding present, and it broke, and he fixes it. You know, he sends it away to things. It's like a hot plate, right? But he doesn't like things. He just doesn't live in this throwaway society. And my brother got fed up with it. And while he was away for the weekend, he took it out and he bought him a new fridge. And he was being kind. But my dad was so upset. He was like, this fridge for him was like, the new fridge is smaller and it's like this, and he was happy with his old fridge, right? Who lives by sell-by dates here, or expiry dates? A few people, right? My dad doesn't. He looks at it, and he might look at the sell-by date, and then he'll open it, and his first test is, he'll smell it, right? And if it smells okay, he might taste it, right? And if it's okay, he'll eat it. He does not care when it expired, or the sell-by date. He buys a ham at the beginning of the month, and he cooks it, And then for the next month, he'll have every day, he'll take some of that ham off and have it for lunch. And by the end of the month, it starts to go green, right? It starts to go furry. But he doesn't care, he just hacks it off and he'll just take some from underneath it. Anyway, he cleaned out his larder about a year ago and he found some snails in there that were 30 years old. He found a lot of other things. He opened it and he did his smell test. He said, even for me, that's too much, right? So people, like say, they're frugal, right? And actually, if we became, as a society, a bit more frugal, actually the environment would benefit from that, right? We just, and the plastics that we use and everything, right? And actually, you know, I hand out those pheasants at the beginning. Nobody wants them really. I mean, the same. Like you go to a butcher's shop, you used to see pigs hanging up there, you used to see pheasants hanging up there, rabbits, whatever, and you'd be happy to have it. Nowadays, we kind of live in it, we want it all nicely packaged, you know, presented so that we don't have to touch it, and, you know, it's all clean, we just put it in the oven. But then, actually, it's not really helping society. So actually, we should become more frugal, right? It would help, not just, you know, it would help the environment. So that's one thing we can learn. Another thing that we can learn is humility. If you find someone that fought in the war, or served in the war, they're incredibly humble people. A quote from the Bible, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love. So, the reason I came up with this title for this service was, just before Remembrance Day, I went down to do something for work with the Royal British Legion in Chingford. And they had like a party for their families and they're basically the old soldiers, but their children and their grandchildren. And they booked me to come along and do something. So I came along and I entertained them, and then afterwards this old soldier came up to me with his medals, and he said, and he came up to me and he said, I want to shake your hand. And I was like, a bit taken aback, to be honest. And so he looked at me and he said, I want to shake your hand. And I looked at him, and who watches Bake Off here? Anyone watch Bake Off? Right? You get Paul Hollingwood, you know, the handshake means you've done a really good job. And I said, to be honest, I don't really feel that you should be shaking my hand. Actually, I should be shaking your hand. Because I saw he had his medals and he'd obviously fought in the war. And I said, I owe you a much greater debt than I can. So actually, I should be shaking your hand. And he said, no, I want to shake your hand. He said, because you have the hardest job in the world. He said, probably the most rewarding, but one of the hardest jobs in the world. Because he said, I saw you entertained this room, you know, all ages, my children, my grandchildren, they had a great time. I want to shake your hand. And I said, yeah, but, you know, you fought in the war. I said, you know, that's much worse. And he said, no, honestly, fighting in the war was easier than doing what your job was. I was like, no, I cannot believe that. But anyway, I sat down with him, and I just wanted to give something back to him. Because I was quite moved by the way he was talking about it. So, anyway, I talked a little bit about him, and I said, you know, how was it? And we started talking. I showed him a few things personally. And then we were talking, and he started to share a little bit about his life. And he was basically, at age 16, he went to sign up. And they said, no, you have to be 18. But basically, in those days, they said, if you come back tomorrow, and you've had a couple of birthdays, you can go. You can sign up. So he went back the next day, and he said, I'm 18, and he was off, you know. But incredible, I mean, at age 16, you know, doing that kind of thing. Incredibly humble. So it's getting harder now, right? That generation that actually fought, and I pray, actually, one thing I pray is that none of us have to go through that kind of thing again, right? Or grow up in that kind of time again, right? And hopefully, none of us will see that, and our future generations or whatever. But if you find people like that, like I say, there's an awful lot, like I say, you can learn from them. The other thing that you can learn from them is altruism. So again, Anyone under 20 can tell me what that word means? Under 20? Yeah, Kai.
Basically being selfless.
Selfless, right? Okay, that's correct, right? Okay, so, a couple of quotes on that. Altruism is one of the most fundamentally social impulses and doing things for others, without expecting anything in return, is the core to what makes us human. This is why, from the day that the Facebook platform launched in 2007, Causes has been honoured to be one of the most popular applications with over 140 million users. I didn't even know there was a Causes thing on Facebook. Right? I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And I had to go onto Facebook and look at it. But basically, it's the same as if you join a group, you set up a Facebook group, right? And it's like a charity group or whatever. But that's one of the biggest users in Facebook, apparently, right? I didn't know. I didn't even know there was a Causes thing. So you make your group, if it's like for cancer or whatever it is, and then people join that. It's just a way to reach out to people and connect to people. Couple more quotes on altruism. Every man must decide whether he'll walk in the light of creative altruism or the dark of destructive selfishness. Martin Luther King. And the root of happiness is altruism, the wish to be of service to others. So that's from the Dalai Lama. So, living for the sake of others. Again, I don't have my grandparents' experiences to kind of fall back on. But again, I can see my dad, right? And he lives in this village up in Wales, right? And ever since, as a child growing up in that house, I always remember him being out maybe 2 nights a week, going to meetings, right? And these meetings were for, he's president of the local cricket club. He doesn't play cricket, right? But he's president of the local cricket club. He's president of the Scouts. He was never a scout. I was never a scout, but he's president of the Scouts. He's a member of the PCC, which is the Parish Church Council, right? He doesn't really go to church. He goes maybe 3 times a year. He goes to, I think, Easter, Christmas, and Remembrance Day. But he sees that these things are important in the community. I remember he used to run a raft race on the river. For cancer, for a charity cancer. He did a bridge night. He's done bridge competitions for like a hospice, support the local hospice and things. He ran a country fair for a number of years up there. And a lot of these things, they have actually no benefit to him. But he sees that they're important. He sees that in the community, they hold the community together. And like I say, he's on the parish council, and the parish council, their books, a bit like sometimes our movements, that it's hard to take care of these buildings. So they have a church, and every 5 years, that church has to have what's called a quintillial report, which is basically a survey of the church, and they're told you have to fix the roof or the windows, or do this or do that, or they shut it down. And again, my dad doesn't really go to church, but he sees the importance of the church in the community. So he says people need to get married there, people need to, when they die, or christened, or for people, that go every week, it's important that the church is there in the community, such as the village hall, which is also kind of connected to it. Anyway, about 15 years ago, the bookkeeping, the books were going less and less income, and expenses going up and up and up. So he looked at it and he said, well, we need to save money somewhere. So he said, let's go through it. We need to make more money, but we need to save more money. So he started working on both levels. But the first thing he said is, we're paying, this is 15 years ago, he said, we're paying £2,000, was it 2,000? Probably 2,000 a month or a year. Anyway, £2,000 for a contractor to come and cut the grass. Probably 2,000 a year. We don't need to pay that anymore. And everyone in the room is like, well, we do, because otherwise the grass is going to grow and, it's not going to cut itself. How are we not going to get rid of that fee? He said, I'll do it. So for the last 15 years, he's been going to the church once a week. In the winter he doesn't have to, but in the summer he has to go twice a week. And he spends about 3 hours going around all the gravestones and keeping the grass trimmed, right? And it, like I say, it takes him about 3 hours, and in the summer it's twice a week. He's now 87, but he's still doing it, you know, in the summer. And sometimes people come to him and say, oh, it's your birthday, I'll do it for you next week, or I'll give you a week's worth of cutting, you know, or 7 times of cutting the grass, or whatever. And then he would say to me, he said, I've been to church twice this week. How many times have you been? And I'm like, well, once. I said, but how many times have you been in to the church? That's not the point. I've been to church. So when finances got more difficult, he then set up this organisation called the Friends of St. Mary's. And it was for people like himself that maybe don't go to church every week, but saw the value of the church and the community. And he gets them to sign up to a standing order, and then it just runs itself, right? Every month or every year that is taken out of the thing. But still, the finances are not great. So he's had to come up with kind of ideas to put on. So he's put on like cooking demonstrations in the church, he's put on valuation days, he's put on like talent shows, choral nights, again, things that like recently I went up to help him for one of them, and he had a bridge afternoon, right? And you might think, well, bridge afternoon, how many people that's going to attract? He managed to sell 120 tickets to this bridge afternoon, and people were paying £40 a head. He got the top guy from the UK to come up there and teach people bridge, and he obviously had to pay him, but he made like £5 grand from just this one event. And like I say, he's always thinking, and then now the church hall has got like problems, and he's kind of like getting involved with that. But like I say, you know, people, we need to be more altruistic. These things, a lot of these things don't help him, but he sees the need in the community to keep those things going. So who here, again, under 20, can tell me who that is? Now, I know you know, you're not under 20 though. You're over 21, I think. Right, anyone tell me? Do you know who that is? No? JFK, okay? John Kennedy, right? And he says, ask not what you can do, what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. So if I said, I'm going to change that, and I'm going to ask not what the world can do for you, but what you can do from the world. How would you feel? What can you do for the world? It'd probably be like a rabbit in the headlights, right? Because it's just like, you know, it's like such a big thing. What can I do for the world, right? You take it down to the country level or a nation level, and I say, what can you do for the nation? Again, it's a bit like a rabbit in the headlights, right? It's such a big thing. But if you change it and go down the scale of it and say, ask not what your community can do for you, ask what you can do for your community, that makes it more manageable, right? It makes it more realistic to you and to me, right? So, if I look at it and I think about it, I would say I probably have 3 communities, right? I have my local community where I live, right? That's a community that I'm involved in, right? I have this community here, that's another community, but I also have where I grew up, right? Because my father's still there, and I've got friends and family and things like that. So in one sense, I've got 3 communities. So in one sense, I can get involved in 3 different communities, right? And we need to think, are we proactive in, coming back to this topic of being proactive or reactive, are we being proactive in any of those 3 areas? Because the community, whichever way you look at it, it's screaming out for help, right? And for needs and support, right? Recently I went to my local theatre club because I wanted to book the hall for something. And they were like, yeah, well, it's not easy because we've got a set on here and we require getting 10 volunteers to change the set, and they all have to be here on the same date at the same time. And getting 10 people together for an hour or 2 hours, it's not easy to change all of this set. So we don't know, but it basically is all run by volunteers, right? So Also, Rotary. Anyone a member of Rotary clubs here? No, right, okay. They're also